we go into mid-September, we're going to start seeing reports that are mixed, some good, some bad, and might be some surprises in there that are more negative than positive as we go forward. The other thing, there's a dynamic that's happened in the markets. I haven't been around for a long time. When I started in 1979, the volume on the New York Stock Exchange was 40 million. And the other thing that's helped that happen, and it wasn't just Robinhood, but it's fractional shares.
Sure.
So my favorite line is, investing used to be for someone, now it's for everyone. You know,
but isn't that a good thing though, because you have more liquidity?
No, it's a very good thing.
Yeah.
It's a very good thing. And you know, and the fractional shares is given access to markets. Welcome everyone to the Kendall Report. It is Wednesday, kind of a boring day, I guess a narrow trading range today from the standpoint of what went on. From a volatility standpoint, certainly compared to yesterday and even the last several days. So before I get into tonight's video, this is coming into the final day of the discounts for the indicators, so make sure you go check that out, kendallreport.com/indicators. So enough of that. I hope you, a lot of you are taking advantage of that. I really appreciate it, mainly because this is going to set the tone for coming into some of our symposiums and some other things. It's going to be real helpful to have those to participate. Anyway, so let's get into today's action. Really, we saw the markets just kind of continuing on. We were able to stay over 4,500. You'll see here in a few minutes on the technicals that there's been a new issue of the Fibonacci pattern has been updated, and it's been updated even higher. So all of a sudden, all of these metrics are starting to come alive really quick. And you know, I know people like to go back, well, 3 days ago you said this, and now you say this. Markets are dynamic. I go with as the markets are unfolding, try to anticipate what might happen, and you know, that's the best you can do. I've always told you several times that the realities of this is that, you know, it's like driving down that old country road with your headlights on, right? You can only see the next corner. So you don't know when that corner is coming sometimes. Sometimes you can anticipate it pretty easily if you know the patterns and the roads and the probabilities, and that's what I play into. Interesting, I'll show you in the database, it's starting to respond just like I told you it would. We're getting closer to the end of the week, and we've got plenty of metrics coming out. Let's just go through those real quick. So let's talk about today's metrics. ADP came out. It was weaker than expected, down at 177. 195 was around pretty much the street expectations for that report. Mortgage apps were up 2.3. I think there was a negative expectation there, so that came in better. GDP revision 2.1 from 2.4, so that's weakened. And you know, of course, there's a bunch of folks out there screaming, "Oh, it's coming! Here it is! Everything's starting to weaken." Not so much. Deflator was at 2%. So, I think these metrics are pretty much in line. I don't think they're telling us much of anything. We are seeing some movement a little bit around on the interest rates, which I'll talk about here shortly. But tomorrow, really what we got coming out is a couple things. We got claims and continuing claims. Claims expected to be 235. I put on here, will claims trigger a further rally? So what if claims come in, I don't know, above 250, 270, 260? Maybe that's enough to go, okay, finally things are weakening, and all of that metric will trigger even more expectations for the Fed to do nothing as we come into the September meeting. I think they do something no matter what, but I'll talk about that when we get closer to the meeting, see what's set up at that time. We'll also have continuing claims at 1.702. Those came in pretty good last week, so not sure if they're going to get any increases or what's happening. I think this number's been stabilizing between 1.69 and 1.73, and it's just been moving around there for a while. And then the other thing coming out is Chicago PMI, and I didn't write down what the expectations were, but that's coming out. I don't think it's material at all, and I think we'll just see none of these reports really have anything to do with any real movements in the markets unless there is some really big surprise number on the claims. That could do something. And actually, the biggest report this week has been probably the most inaccurate report that there is, which is the JOLTS number, right? That came in, down at 8.8, and it came in at 8.8 because a whole bunch of people did not actually respond to the survey. So surveys are surveys, and I guess nobody was home. Everybody was out. So that number could pop back up next week. That'll be interesting as well. But we're about tomorrow on Thursday will be the final day of August, and I think I don't think there's any real window dressing or any kind of movement that's going to happen there at all. But I do think that this will be kind of just a end of the month, and nothing will really happen. It doesn't appear to be anything going on. We come into next on September, especially. I've been targeting this third week of September. I think that's also a quadruple witching expiration on that week as well. So there'll be a lot to talk about. We've got the Fed and all kinds of things. So we got plenty of fun and plenty of things to look forward to. So one of the things that I noticed again is just kind of creep back. S&P was up 0.3, if I can read my writing, 3.38 today. The Nasdaq up 0.54, 0.40 on the Russell. But this is the interesting thing. All of a sudden, the Nas is back up 33.9%. So that's moved back up pretty good. 17.6 on the S&P and 8.8 on the Russell, which has been a laggard all year. Never really got any traction. 9 of the 11 sectors were positive, with tech and energy leading the way. So nothing really outstanding. It was a fairly moderate day, but we're still seeing that follow through. I think today was the fourth day up in a row. I'm pretty sure that's the case. We'll probably get one more, and then maybe Friday we come back in. We'll see what sets up when we go through the technicals here in just a few minutes. Don't really have any rants or anything to really feature tonight because we're really in that midpoint. I think everything's going to be focused in on that employment numbers on Friday, and that's the game for this week. And like I said, the most inaccurate, the most kind of we won't call it a joke, but the JOLTS report, it used to be just a blah, blah, blah report no one paid attention to. All of a sudden, that was the biggest trigger for that rally that we had yesterday. That's what triggered it. So, you get the big bump, and that's the way it goes. So let's go ahead and get into the database. Unfortunately, it's lagging a day. I do anything to have these numbers for today's run, but we're matter of fact, in about 15 minutes, we start collecting data from our data vendor, and we'll run all the servers here in the next hour and a half. So those of you with WaveTech, you will know exactly what that number is. And by the way, if you want WaveTech, you just go there, kendallreport.com/WaveTech. You can get that, and it's prorated. There's no trial, but it's prorated. I think it's $3.80 a day. And if you got it today, you'd pay for one day, then you get billed the next day for the full month. So, but that's a way to get these numbers, and I feature this every night because it's an amazing accuracy in these turnarounds of the markets and when these different phases start. So anyway, let's get into that and get to tonight's video. So here we go. We are at 20.79. So we were around 17 and change yesterday. Let me look at that number real quick. Yeah, we were 16.94 yesterday. And that's, like I said, a day. So this is for today. I suspect we'll have some more traction because markets continue to stay positive today. So on Wednesday, so let's look at I guess the configuration is likely that we're going to go back over 22%. And I told you the numbers to watch here are 22 to 28. That will be the next level. That's where we'll call the bottoming process, where a new cycle attempts to start. It doesn't mean that it will, but that's part of the evolution of the database. And you have to, we've got 15,539 symbols in the database. So what that's doing is it's starting to get some traction. We only have 32, 31 in there right now. So this will, I think, continue to rotate in. And ultimately, if we get above 42%, that is exactly where the markets go. So I'll just say, I just see somebody commenting on Nvidia. If I get through the normal stream again, it might become a daily feature where we do 3 or 4 stocks at the end of the stream. So hang on to the end if you haven't. If you're new, we'll probably start doing Apple, Tesla, maybe Nvidia. I didn't do that yesterday, which I should have. So that might, like I said, I'm just going to roll through things as fast as I can. We get to the end, I'll try to update that. I think I've seen a lot of good comments on the channel for that, and maybe it's appropriate to start to just cover that. I don't like to go over an hour on these streams, so it just depends on, and I don't really have any rants that I'm aware of right now. Something could come up, but at the moment I don't really have anything going on. And and somebody did remind me, I'm sorry, PCE is tomorrow as well. So I will, we'll talk about that. That could trigger things. I'm not sure it's going to have anything, but who knows? Maybe it prints down and we get that to do a rally as well. Okay, so let's go and move on, and let's go to the technicals here. I think you'll find this a bit interesting. Okay, so the S&P, this is an hourly chart. See, we're trying to flatten off here a little bit. PPMs are starting to roll. We actually have some downward projections here for the hourly, and let me just bring that up. We are looking at 45.10, 45.03, and 44.98. So maybe a test of 4,500. That's 25 handles from where we're trading right now. We're currently at 45, 26, 25 up 2 on the session. So we could fade back in. It looks like all the PPMs are trying to fade down, and maybe we get into some of the lower moving averages here, come into the 40, which would put us right around, that's right now at 44.95. This is an hourly chart. So just expect to see this thing fade. It looks like, as usual, a peak around the London Open, maybe some fade into the Open tomorrow. And I don't know if you folks have been paying attention here, but almost every morning you can buy, the market is just, you got this bid that shows up right at the open. Everybody comes in, there's a little mini stampede. Sometimes it's a big one, but they've been playing that pattern. I keep waiting for it to not work, and it's been working every day for a while. So just a little note there from that standpoint. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the daily chart. And this is where I think you'll see something interesting. I talked last night and yesterday's video about these fib targets up here, and you can see there's some slightly offset dots. These actually updated from the pattern, and sometimes we'll get these little incremental updates. So the original projection was for 45.73. We move over to today, and it's now 45.88. So another 15 handles on the upside minimum. And then we've got fib target 2 at 46.73 and 47.26. And we get anything over the 46.73, folks, we're going to be talking about ATHs, and this thing's going to be on a run. There's no way they're not going to let this thing run up. And, you still got some folks out there trying to play the 1987 right shoulder. It's certainly possible. But I'm telling you, if we still have, I didn't mention this on the database, but the weekly database is well into that major forward-looking trend mode. And, we're pushing up, up into the 60+% range. And that's not where the collapse is going to happen from. And we get into Sunday, I will be, you know what? I just realized Sunday won't be a video. We have a holiday on Monday. I'll probably do the video on Monday. I'll let you know tomorrow night what the plan is, but I think Monday will probably be it. And so we'll do one on Monday. So we get a long weekend coming. I forgot about that. But the configuration here, you can see, I talked about this yesterday. The PPM1 is looking to stabilize at or above trend mode here for the next several days. And it still looks like some more strength coming in. And we look at the market grid for tomorrow, and let's review yesterday, because the high low yesterday was, let me get the numbers here, 45.30, the low 44.96. And if we look at the market grid numbers, 44.93 was S1 and 35 was R2. So we basically did an S1, R2. We come into today, there's a couple numbers that you need to pay attention to. The first one is the pivot number that's right here, and that's that 44.94 number that we looked at. So we should hold that number. Like I said, in today's action, we traded right down to 96. So 94 is your pivot. We took out 94 and closed below that. That would indicate that we would probably see a move down into maybe some lower numbers. Don't expect that's going to happen with the configuration. If you look at PPM2 is starting tomorrow on Friday, it looks like it's going to cut through and give us a signal to break through the second derivative. That's this middle indicator here. Looks like we're not in trend mode there, but it looks like it wants to work over the next several days toward a trend mode, and we're likely to just to climb this configuration here on the moving averages. At some stage, we probably test the averages, but right now we're looking at the 21 is flowing through here right at, let me get that number, 44.63 is the extreme. So if there was any kind of reaction or rejection number that comes out, 44.60 is going to be your extreme on the downside. Probably be about as good as the 43.50 number was that I talked about over the last couple of weeks, which we hit exactly. But this pattern looks like it will continue on the upside. So I'm going to stick with just the dailies tonight. We'll go into more details tomorrow night as we come into the long weekend. I'll set that up the best I can. Real quick before I bring up the Nasdaq chart, looking at the market grid, we're looking at for Thursday, we're looking at S1 45.12, R2 45.48, and we do have the potential of getting up close to some of these fib targets on the upside. All right, so here's the Nasdaq. Similar configuration, but it's much stronger, and this has been the case all year long, right? That's why Nas is up 33.4, S&P second in line at 17.6. So there's a lot of the big high cap, large cap stocks are in the Nasdaq, so that is to be expected, but Nasdaq has been the play for sure, and it looks like it's going to continue based on what we're seeing here on the forward-looking projections from the indicators on the predictive SMAs. This looks like we're going to continue to climb up this range, and potentially, if I'm going to flop over to the weekly chart here, potentially we could challenge this high that we had. Let me just bring that up. That would be the high that we had here in July. July's high is 16.062. So that could be where we're ending up, and it looks like ultimately it wants to challenge the all-time highs for the year, which maybe is popular, maybe it's becoming more popular to have that opinion. But you can see all the configuration of the forward-looking stuff is now went from trying to roll over to, and we've never really seen a rollover look on the weekly charts, whether it be on the Nasdaq or the S&P. We really haven't seen that. On the Russell, we're just in this choppy sideways range. But the bottom line is we've reversed. We're back above the 10-week moving average here on the Nasdaq. I'll go back to the daily here, kind of flop around just a bit. And really the daily has a pretty decent slope as well. And just like with the S&P, it's going to maintain well into trend mode, which tells us that we're probably going to hold at least that 21 period moving average. That's at 15,164. We're 15,508. So that would be your probably buy the dip number at that level. So I would expect to see that. This pattern is just way too bullish, and especially the way PPM2 is setting up. It is, you can see this middle indicator here is just really starting to give a forecast of some really strong numbers. In fact, if I put my cursor over where it's likely to go to a 0.45, that's a very strong angle of attack. And so it looks like we're going to see, and like I said, this is daily, but this puts us in to that third week of September. So originally I was looking for some kind of decline into that. I'm changing that forecast. It now looks like the possibilities of a rally into that third week. Maybe, yeah, we'll just see what it sets up. I don't want to get too far ahead. Right now, markets are positive. They're looking like they're going to continue to be so. And I think you can still, on any of these numbers getting hit within the configuration off the market grid, S2 looks like any day you see an S2 looks like a pretty good place to buy. Just watch out for the hourly graphs and what those are setting up from the standpoint on the intraday stuff. So just be careful on that. But it does look like anything that looks like an S1, S2 on the S&P or the Nasdaq looks like probably buy the dip with these kind of acceleration numbers out there. It's pretty positive, folks. There's nothing to be negative about here. So I suspect the metrics that we're going to see, maybe employment numbers come in a little weaker. Maybe that's what we're getting set up for. And it does look sort of like a peak. Maybe there'll be some profit taking or something before the weekend close. But I'll cover that as we get into tomorrow night. Like I said, I'll try to go into a little more depth from that standpoint. All right, I've been sticking with the Russell cash just because the algos work better on that than the futures. And this has a different look. We did hit fib target 2 today. I've been talking about this number. That fib target 2 number is fib target 2, 1906, the high 1908.85. So we printed there. 1919 is fib target 3, and we also have the 40 period moving average come in at 1923. So that's probably going to be around your ceiling. If you look here, it looks like from the standpoint, it looks like the Russell might be topping out tomorrow, and this could be the scenario that plays out in the S&P and the Nasdaq. But it does look like we have a potential bid coming into Friday. Like I said, I'll try to set this up after we see tomorrow's action, see what kind of numbers come out of the database, see what kind of feel we can get as we come into Friday and the end of the week and before the long weekend. So pretty amazing. Here's the 10-year. We continue to see rates starting to come down. Look at these fib targets. I always mention these numbers because you sometimes don't think they're any way they're going to get hit. You can go back to previous numbers over here back in July when we were getting targets for the fib targets on the upside were 415, 430, and 440. Well, we printed all the way up to 438, 436. I think, 436 was the high print. So we got almost to the 440. We almost got to the extremes. We did get some new projections that also were right in that range, but this ends up to be the top. And the only thing that's happening here is it looks like we're going to get some stability. Maybe we print down to the fib target 2 here, which is right now at the, let me get this right number here, fib target 2 on the downside is for 401, we'll call it 402. We printed down to 408.7, finished at 411.7. It looks like it wants to turn back up, so that might have been it for today, just coming close to both the 40 and the fib target 2. That might be it. It looks like over the next couple of days, it looks like we're probably going to come back into these moving averages, probably move back towards 420, 425 as possible. But the extreme would be down to that 402 level on the downside. So let's go to the 2-year. Two-year is probably going to stabilize here. We did print down to the 4.836, finish at 4.886, so bounced a little bit off of that. I think we just stabilize here. It looks like everything's going to flatten out. Don't see any action here at all, or any kind of, I would say, any type of movement in the yield curve is going to be pretty stable as we come into Friday. Maybe we can pick up something there as well. All right, we're rolling along pretty quick here, folks. So we covered crude. Crude oil has continued to move higher. We moved up to the 82.05 level, closed at 81.63, getting close toward that. I think that was an R2 number. Let me bring up the grid here for today. This is the daily chart. This is for Wednesday. 82.10 was R3, and we printed 82.05. So pretty close to spot on there. We look at, we have a couple things going on here with the crude. It looks like it's trying to roll back into the range. We're probably going to retest the 40 period moving average. That puts us back at 79.34. There is some support here at the midpoint, which is around the 81 level, but it looks to me that we're probably going to move back into this range and just stabilize right in there. Nothing earth-shocking, although it does look like as we go out toward that magical third week of September that we're likely to continue to drift down, maybe test that 40 or even get below it. Let's take a quick look at the weekly chart on this. Yeah, so weekly still has some pretty good support, and those numbers are coming in right now. The 10-week moving average is at 78, so that's going to be about your extreme. But, and I've been talking about this, that's why I wanted to bring this up, is that the weekly 10 is starting to fade pretty quick. So we're likely to come ultimately back into, I'm just going to call 78, 75 as an extreme. We're going to come back in, but it won't be for at least a couple of weeks. And there's still some upward bias here. Fib target 2 is 82.58, which we basically printed just above it. We actually printed up to 85.28, and the high was 84.89. 85.28 was fib target 3 in here on the weekly. So we basically have satisfied all the upside. I remember talking about this weeks ago. We first got those fib targets back in the 10th of July. So we're basically satisfied that, and it looks like some stability, and everything looks lower coming into year end on the crude oil. All right, sticking with weekly. Weekly continues to, with these rates dropping a little bit, we got a little bit of a bid going here all the way up to 1977 on, this is a weekly gold. So we're trading right up at that upper end of the range. And that is putting us 1969. That's the number I've been talking about for a little bit. So we're at the extreme. I believe this downward projection here on, you see these three dots, yellow, cyan, and red on the downside. I think those end up to be an island, what I call an island projection, where you get one bar projects that, and if we continue positive next week, then that calculation goes away. It could go another week, but I don't think it's going to be material. At least at PPM 1 and 2, this is weekly, are starting to stabilize. So this will not make Peter Schiff too sad, but it won't make him happy. All right, so here we go with Bitcoin. And what I'll do after this, since we're getting through here, we're about 35 minutes in. I will go ahead and I'll cover a few stocks. I'll do Nvidia, Apple, Tesla, and maybe you folks can throw out a couple ideas, and maybe I'll do 2 stocks by request. I'll just pick something randomly, so don't take anything personal. But as we look at Bitcoin, we come right back into that wedge. I'm going to blow that up so you can see this just a bit better. This is that wedge I've been talking about, where we have downward slope moving average on top, upward slope on the bottom. And so what you have happening here is that downward slope is significant. It's at a 1.10. And so that number is at 28,826. That's probably your ceiling. And actually, we're pretty close to printing up at the high end of the range for RXT is 28,439. And we're looking at right now, just looking at high 28,142. So we're printing right up into that range. I think we stay within this range, and for the next couple of weeks, we just kind of walk this thing in, and then possibly the magical third week of September, we'll make a decision on directional movement, whether we're going to see the 40 break down or not, or whether we're going to be able to break out to the upside. We do have live Fibonacci targets up here, which are continuing to calculate, which seem a little bit ridiculous, but we're looking at right now at 36 to 40,043. I'm sure there's a bunch of people like to see these come to reality, but we don't always hit these numbers. But these are continuing to calculate. If we can get back above these moving averages, then there's some building of a probability that we would rally up and maybe retest the highs. Then there might be some scenario that would suggest that we would go to those levels. Now, if we look at the equities, if we look at correlation with equities and other things that are out there that Bitcoin seems to pay attention to, or the players in there are all influenced by the same world we all live in. So that would suggest maybe we're going to see more strength, and it looks like we come into mid to late October. We have some potential from what the algos are projecting here. You can see these dotted lines are the projection of price movement, and also on the PPMs, we're seeing some improvement on PPM 1. It doesn't look to be material, and these things update every time we get a new update every week. These algos are going to adjust as the coefficient gets more and more information. There's going to be some adjustment here, but right now this is sort of what it's looking like. Okay, let's do Nvidia. So we're going to do a few stocks here. So Nvidia is a rocket ship, right, to the moon. You can see the slope here, or the angle of attack, continues to be very positive. We traded down to the 10-period moving average, which is 445. The low was 448.88. That's close enough for government work, as they say. But that slope and that angle is going to be dominant as we go forward. So I saw somebody somewhere, Twitter or somewhere, where they're talking about, all these BlackRock and everybody's buying AI. AI is just a bubble. It's a phony. It is not a bubble. It is very real. And they definitely at least got the right configuration for a lot of this expansion that's going on. And so we've got like 160 76 people out there right now. Just a quick question for you folks. Give me like a thumbs up if you've actually used in a material way Chat GPT or any other AI. And I'd just be curious for a quick little survey. Give me a thumbs up if you have. I can tell you we use it every day, and it's a big part of everything that's going on. I'm working on actually putting a process together for the GPT API right now that I think is going to be a game changer. Another predictive type strategy, but with the database. I plan on doing some very deep analysis of the database and using some AI, and that is the case. But yeah, so anyway, thanks for your responses on that. But let's look at the short term real quick before we move on. And once again, just momentum is trying to peak out, but the secondary, the PPM2 on the daily is still moving higher. I mean, these are very robust levels. So, for instance, let's do a quick education class here. So let's see if I can bring something up fairly quick to show you, because we have right now PPM1 is at a 1.25, PPM2 has not accelerated, but it's going to accelerate. I'll just put the cursor over here, looking at moving towards a 0.9 plus. But I want to show you something here that's I think will be interesting. And I've shown this many times, but I want to bring this up real quick. And this is the chart that actually shows you what it is. And we're at 1.2 here on Nvidia on PPM1. So we're in what I consider to be the extension phase. So you're going to get, if we started to dig in from an Elliott viewpoint, you're going to start to get multiples where you get a 1.618, maybe even into a higher multiple than that on an extension. And typically when you get to 1.2, you get to, you can see here the peak value is around 1.5. It can go to 1.68. This is just round numbers. What happens though, if we start to get above 1.8, then you got to flip over to this gold over here, and then you get into basically a parabolic type scenario. And those scenarios, you know where it ends, nobody knows, and that's one of the things that we could see. Let me flash back to. Let's flash back to the stock chart. But this is an extended pattern. So if we start counting, this is one. If we just look at the ratios here, and so that's, I'm going to put something up here, and I haven't shown you, but we'll do this, and I'll leave it up for these other stocks as well. But if we put the pattern finder on here, and I'll blow this up, this thing is just amazing for coming up with some recognizing the patterns. So it looks like to me, if we look at this, if we started to get this pattern to elongate out, we could easily, all of a sudden, we're trading what at 490. We're easily could see 525, 535 on this stock, and the moving average. This, like I said, these are all these numbers are going to change because they're way out in the future. I believe these are 50 bars out. Let's take a look at that real quick. Yeah, they're 50 out. And so it's going to change, but right now the moving average, the 10-period moving average, is being forecast to be up in the 540 level. So the markets are typically going to be above that. You can see what's happening with the PPMs here is they're stabilizing. Now this is a daily chart, but we're still seeing acceleration in PPM2 and PPM3. And the best way to describe how these sequences work is that we get this pattern where ppm1 is the 10 period moving average. So then the secondary trends start to come in. So all of a sudden the 21 period moving average starts to move up, and it's a little longer. It has less noise in it. And then the 40 ends up setting up what I would say at the end of the sequence, we probably see maybe a fourth wave hit and then maybe one high, and then we go on. So the point is that these moving averages, the PPMs, rotate. So initially you get strength in this 10, it becomes unimportant. The 21 becomes a secondary, and it looks like it's being projected out well into October with this thing continued to be in that trend mode. And like I said, with us hitting that 1-2, we're in the extension pattern. The probabilities of an extension pattern are greater than 60%, which means market's going a lot higher yet. All right, so hope you followed that. This is the insight that the algos and the indicators are going to give you as well. So we come into Apple. This is daily Apple, and we're seeing the same thing. It sort of looks like the indexes, right? So we're looking at least a peak momentum value. We got above. Apple had a pivot as well. Originally, I thought we were going to stay below that, but I thought a lot of things were going to stay at least in a sideways mode for a while, but we're getting these breakouts. Look at ppm2 here is looking to accelerate well into trend mode. So we may fall back into this pattern, but the 10 period moving average is going to be that buy the dip. It's at 178 right now, but it's up. Let me just get you a number. It's only up about $1 a day, but in the next 5 or 6 days, all of a sudden you're going to be 183, and the support line is going to be moving up. But what's significant in this pattern is what's going on with the 21. So it's starting to show at least a projected acceleration, just like we were looking at I think it was the S&P, is we're looking at a breakout or a signal going above the second derivative here on the ppm2, which tells us that we should continue to see this thing move up, and ultimately we could come into a sideways pattern, but it still is likely to stay. We're just going to run a 180, 181 would be the extreme. So that would be where you would be looking to buy the dip. So let's go ahead and do weekly. Similar scenario, getting acceleration. We're back over the 10, just like with the Nasdaq. It's interesting that we got that configuration. The 21 is at a 0.60, which is very bullish. ppm1 is flat, basically 0.05, but we're trading above it, and it looks like it wants to accelerate. And once again, this is sort of interesting in that there's some kind of event as we get into mid to late September that we'll have to revisit on. One second. Okay, so here we are, Tesla weekly. We're trading right up into this is a resistance, folks. I still think there's a potential for a move back into this wedge. I don't think Tesla is going to follow the rules so much, but it's very similar to where we are in Apple. Apple's up at its resistance point weekly too. So watch those really, really close, because that's that will set the tone for these indexes as well. Not so much on Tesla. It is a big player in the index, but the Apple is obviously more significant, but we've seen some decent moves in the S&P without Apple's participation. In fact, even while Apple was going down. So there's a bit of a rotation. Todd, you're right. When did Tesla ever follow the rules? Actually, it's followed them pretty well, from my viewpoint anyway. But we definitely, I left the pattern finder on here. So we definitely have a potential for a right shoulder and maybe one more leg down and back into these moving averages here, maybe around 198, maybe a little bit lower. I still think we probably get some kind of rejection. We'll see what happens next week. I put a weekly nat gas. We'll finish with this one tonight. Wish there was I need to find a better contract than this one. Give me a symbol if you're listening. For nat gas. Yeah, we could, well, that's coming up. Let's do AMD. And then, AMD this is one of those island projections that it had here. We're looking at really just kind of flat. AMD's not really, doesn't look like it's catching a bid here with all the excitement over Nvidia. Was it TSM? Probably same thing. Yeah, I know a lot of people are trying to say, well, if you missed out on Nvidia, you can buy TSM and some of these others. TSM looks a little better than AMD, but all of these are not as bullish as Nvidia. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Yeah, UNG. Thank you for that. So this is where we'll finish here. This is a weekly chart. This thing's been just crawling along the lows here. Doesn't look like anything out there. I'm going to go to a monthly. Yeah, I mean, this, there's a lot of overhead resistance. I'm just popping around on some charts here. Yeah, this market got crushed. We do have some, here's a little silver lining here. We do have some fib targets here on nat gas that we can talk a little bit. 797, 854, 888, trading 720. That's a pretty big move out of there. Maybe a retest of these highs back in August maybe is possible. PPMs on a daily. It's about all I could see. The weekly and the monthly, there's just nothing there other than a crushed market from that standpoint. Okay, folks, that'll do it. Got through quite a bit, including doing some stocks. That was fun. maybe that'll be, if I can just roll through stuff, maybe we can start adding in some of that every night, start to break down some. What would even be more interesting is to have maybe a theme each night. I know everybody wants an update every day of Apple and all that, but maybe we'll start bringing in some stocks and some of your picks and some of my picks from that standpoint. Anyway, folks, I will be here tomorrow night, same time. Don't forget, indicator sale is about over one day, and we do have, I'm hoping that I have a pretty big announcement tomorrow. I think many of you will be happy about, and we'll find out. And excited about the end of this month and coming into the final month of this quarter, and see where this thing ends up and see how year end is set up. And I believe I just said year end, and I believe this week is like the last week of summer even. So it's pretty crazy, this whole scenario. So life moves fast, folks. Pay attention. Do your best. Show up every day. We'll see you tomorrow night.